Girl, let me ask you this from the heart. Have you ever been at your absolute lowest? Fresh out of surgery, body hurting, heart wide open with two brand new babies, and the man you built everything with decides that's the perfect time to try and take it all away? What would you do, honey? Fold and sign? Or find that quiet strength deep down and flip the script on him? Mm-hmm. Well, sis, come sit with me because this is my story. My name is Nia Mitchell, or at least it was, and this is how my husband Derek thought he could break me in that hospital room, but ended up setting me free instead. Child, he had no idea what he started that day. It happened 3 days after my C-section. The room smelled like that strong hospital antiseptic and warm plastic. You know that smell. Clean but still kinda stale, like they wiped everything down 100 times, but it never quite gets fresh. My incision was on fire every time I shifted even a little. I'd barely slept since the surgery. Two little bassinets sat right by the window with my precious twins, Emma and Grace. They were just 3 days old. The afternoon sun was coming through the blinds in these thin golden lines across their blankets. One of them made that tiny little squeak, the kind that makes your heart jump before your brain even catches up. Derek didn't even look at them. He stood there at the foot of my bed like we were discussing a roofing estimate or something. "Nia," he said with this tired sigh, "let's not drag this out." Behind him stood Brianna Parker, 32 years old, always so put together, the executive assistant at Mitchell Construction for 2 years. She looked uncomfortable, but not guilty. Just awkward, like she was waiting for the meeting to end. Derek slid that envelope across my tray table. "I had a lawyer draw everything up. It's fair." My fingers felt numb picking up those papers. Divorce petition, asset division, custody agreement, full custody to Derek Mitchell. I stared at the page for a long moment. Then I asked him real quiet, "You want the babies?" "Yes." No hesitation at all. "They'll have stability with me, a proper home." Child, please. This man hadn't changed one single diaper in his whole life. He gestured toward the envelope again. "There's a cashier's check. $3 million. $3 million. Think of it as a clean break." He said it the same way somebody might say 300. I looked up at him, at Brianna, at that wedding ring still sitting on his finger. "You're serious?" I said. He rubbed his jaw like I was being difficult. "You just had major surgery. Your emotions are all over the place. I'm trying to make this easier. You're not in a position to raise newborn twins right now." Behind him, Brianna shifted her weight and rested her hand lightly on his back, all comforting like they practiced this mess. Something cold settled right in my chest. Not rage, not even heartbreak, just clarity, honey. Pure, ice-cold clarity. I turned my head toward the bassinet. Grace had woken up, her tiny fist stretched above her head, her mouth opening in the sweetest little yawn. Emma slept peaceful beside her. Derek followed my gaze. "They'll have a good life. I can provide things you can't." 10 years. 10 years I helped him build Mitchell Construction from 2 trucks and a helper to one of the biggest contractors in eastern Nebraska. Payroll spreadsheets at midnight, tax forms spread all across our kitchen table, calling subcontractors when he forgot, keeping the book straight while he played golf with clients. But standing in that hospital room, he acted like I'd just been some temporary employee. My incision throbbed again. A nurse passed in the hallway outside. The soft squeak of those rubber shoes echoed through the door. "Sign it," he said. My hand moved before I'd fully decided. I picked up the pen. The paper crinkled softly under my wrist. For a second, the room went completely quiet, except for the distant hum of hospital equipment. Then I wrote my name, Nia Mitchell. Derek exhaled like a man relieved a problem had finally been solved. "Thank you," he he said. He gathered the papers, slid the envelope toward me, and stood up. We'll handle the rest through lawyers. Brianna gave a tight little smile. Take care of yourself, Nia. The two of them walked out together. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and just like that, my marriage was over. I sat there for the longest time. The hospital clock ticked slow on the wall. Grace started fussing, that thin, uncertain cry. I carefully swung my legs off the bed. The movement sent a sharp bolt of pain through my abdomen, but I ignored it. Mothers learn to ignore pain pretty quick, honey. I lifted her gently. She weighed almost nothing. Her tiny fingers wrapped around the edge of my hospital gown. Emma stirred in the other bassinet. I picked her up too. Now I held both my girls, my daughters. Derek thought I'd just walk away from them. The idea was almost funny. I leaned down and kissed Emma's forehead, then Grace's. Your daddy doesn't know me very well, I whispered. The room was quiet except for their soft breathing. I shifted carefully back into the bed and reached for my phone. There was only one person I trusted right now, my best friend, Jada Williams. Retired nurse, been my ride or die since college. She answered on the second ring. Nia, everything okay? No, I said quietly. A pause. Then Jada's voice sharpened instantly. What happened? I glanced at the door. Derek came to the hospital today with Brianna. He offered me $3 million to give him the babies. Silence. Then slowly. Please tell me you threw something at him. No, I said. I signed the papers. But Jada, I need your help. I'm leaving tonight. A long breath came through the phone. Are the babies coming with you? Yes, her answer came immediately. I'll be there in an hour. Night fell early that evening. Hospitals always feel different after dark. Quieter, lights dimmer, hallways echo more. Jada arrived wearing scrubs and her denim jacket. She stepped into the room and froze when she saw the twins. Oh my God, she whispered. Her eyes softened instantly. They're beautiful. She leaned over the bassinets, then looked back at me. You ready? Not really. That's okay, she said. Most big decisions start that way. She moved fast. That's the nurse in her. Within 20 minutes, we had the babies wrapped in hospital blankets and secured into infant car seats. Jada carried one. I carried the other. Each step down the hallway pulled painfully at my incision. But adrenaline is a powerful thing, honey. No one stopped us. Hospitals are busy places. 2 Black women leaving with newborns didn't raise any alarms. Outside, the Nebraska night air felt cool against my face. Jada's pickup truck sat under a flickering parking lot light. She opened the back door and carefully secured both car seats. I climbed into the passenger seat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jada started the engine. Where we going? She asked. Lincoln. She nodded. Good. The truck rolled out of the hospital lot and onto the quiet street. Omaha slid past us in dark storefronts and streetlights. Emma made a soft squeaking noise from the back seat. Grace followed with a sleepy sigh. I twisted around to look at them. Jada glanced at me briefly. You okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. At 6:30 the next morning, Derek Mitchell woke up in his downtown Omaha condo. He poured coffee, checked his phone, and answered a call from the hospital. By the time he hung up, the coffee had gone cold because his newborn daughters were gone. And so was I. We got to Lincoln just after 1 in the morning. Jada lived in a quiet brick ranch on the south side of town, not far from Holmes Lake. It sat on a street lined with maple trees and mailboxes that all leaned a little. The kind of neighborhood where folks still bring in each other's trash cans if they notice one left out too long. Her porch light was on when we pulled up. The house looked warm, safe. That nearly made me cry right there. Jada parked in the driveway and turned off the engine. For 1 second, everything went still. No hospital machines, no hallway carts rattling by, no Derek. Just the soft ticking of the engine cooling and the faint rustle of the twins in the back seat. Jada looked over at me. "You want 30 seconds to fall apart? Take it now," she said gently. "Then we go inside." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "I don't think 30 seconds is going to cover it." "Then take 45. That was Jada. She always knew exactly how much softness to give before she pushed me forward. She carried Grace, I carried Emma. Every step up her front walk hurt. My abdomen felt tight and hot under those giant hospital mesh underwear and borrowed sweatpants. I smelled faintly like hospital soap and milk and fear. Inside, Jada had already set up her spare room. A bassinet borrowed from her daughter, a stack of diapers on a folding table, 2 little pink blankets she'd clearly bought in a hurry, a lamp glowing low in the corner. That room undid me more than the divorce papers had. I stood there with Emma in my arms, and suddenly I couldn't keep holding myself together. I sat down on the edge of the bed too fast and sucked in a breath from the pain. Jada took Emma from me without a word. Then I covered my face with both hands and cried. Not the polite kind either. I mean the ugly, exhausted crying that starts in your chest and makes your whole body shake. The kind you do when there's nobody left to impress. Jada let me cry for maybe a minute. Then she said, "All right now, enough. You can break down, but you not staying down." I lowered my hands and looked at her. Mascara from 2 days ago had probably smeared halfway to my ears. My hair was greasy, my face swollen from surgery and crying and no sleep. I must have looked a mess. And somehow that helped because I had no energy left for pretending. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered. "Yes, you do," Jada said. "You're protecting your girls." The words landed hard because that was true. Not revenge, not drama, not pride. Protection. I nodded once. Then I stood back up. "Okay, tell me what to do next." The next few days were a blur of feeding schedules, pain medication, legal panic, and almost no sleep. That first morning in Lincoln, I sat at Jada's kitchen table in my robe while she made coffee strong enough to raise the dead. The twins were finally asleep after what felt like an all-night protest against being born. Sunlight hit the yellow Formica tabletop. Jada slid a mug toward me and said, "Drink that before you turn into a ghost." Her kitchen smelled like coffee, toast, and baby formula. A normal smell. A home smell. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that. Jada sat across from me with a legal pad. "Start at the beginning," she said, "and don't leave out the parts you're embarrassed about." I gave a tired little laugh. That could take a while. I canceled my dentist appointment. So I told her everything. Not just the hospital room, but the whole thing. How Derek had changed slowly, not all at once. That's the thing people don't always understand. Men like him rarely walk in wearing a sign that says, "I'm gonna break your heart." They ease into it one small disrespect at a time. 10 years earlier, when we were still living in Fremont and Derek had just one truck, we used to sit at our tiny kitchen table and dream out loud. He'd say things like, "Once the business gets steady, we'll breathe easier." I believed him. I worked the books after dinner while he drove around bidding jobs. I handled invoices, payroll, permit fees, workers' comp, paperwork, tax deadlines, all the ugly little details nobody claps for. Derek had charm. I had discipline. Together, we built something real. At least, I thought we did. As the company grew, Derek became the face of Mitchell Construction. He got nicer suits, better watches, a country club membership in Omaha. He started saying things like, "You don't need to worry your head about this part," whenever I asked questions. At first, I thought he was trying to protect me. Later, I realized he was pushing me out. The weird thing is, I let him, because by then I was almost 40, still hoping I might have a baby if I just held on a little longer. And I was tired. Tired women make compromises they'd never advise their daughters to make. Jada listened without interrupting. At one point, she just said, "He didn't get smarter, he got more arrogant." "Same difference," I muttered. "No," she said, "smart men hide it better." That actually made me smile. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My stomach dropped. I answered anyway. "Nia Mitchell?" a man asked. "This is she." "My name is Robert Klein. I represent Derek Mitchell." Of course he did. "What do you want?" "Mr. Mitchell is deeply concerned for the welfare of his children. He would prefer to resolve this privately." I almost admired the nerve. "Privately?" I said. "He served me divorce papers in a hospital room with his mistress standing there." The lawyer ignored that. "If you return the children immediately, Mr. Mitchell is prepared to be generous." I let out a short laugh. He already tried generous. There was a pause. Then his voice cooled. "If you do not cooperate, this may become a custodial abduction matter." That phrase hit like ice water. Custodial abduction. My daughters were 3 days old, and some man in a tie was already reducing them to a legal strategy. "I am their mother," I said. "Yes," he said smoothly, "but you left the hospital in a highly emotional state shortly after major surgery. That won't play well, Mrs. Mitchell." I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles hurt. Jada was watching me. She could tell from my face this wasn't good. The lawyer kept going. "Mr. Mitchell is willing to overlook the current disruption if you bring the twins back today." "Tell Mr. Mitchell," I said, my voice shaking now, "that if he wants to talk about disruption, he can start with bringing his secretary to my hospital room." Then I hung up. My hands were trembling. Jada reached over and took the phone away from me. "Good," she said. "Now cry later. Right now, we make a plan." That afternoon, Derek went on local television. Jada had the news on in the living room while she folded baby clothes. I was in the recliner trying to get Grace to latch properly while Emma slept on my chest. The anchor's voice turned serious. "Our next story involves Omaha businessman Derek Mitchell, who says his newborn twin daughters were taken from the hospital by his estranged wife." I looked up so fast, Grace slipped off and started wailing. Then Derek appeared on screen. Gray sport coat, concerned expression, controlled voice. I knew that look. He used it with inspectors and bank officers and anyone else he wanted to charm. "This is a private family matter," he told the reporter. "But I'm worried. Nia has been under a lot of emotional strain. I just want my daughters safe." I stared at the screen. He even looked tired in a flattering way, like a man nobly carrying a burden. I could feel heat rising up my neck. He kept talking. "My only concern is those little girls. They need stability. They need medical follow-up. If Nia sees this, I'm asking her to do the right thing." Jada muted the TV. The room got very quiet except for Grace crying and my own breathing, which had gone ragged. "Look at me," Jada said. "He's building a story. He's making you sound unstable. And if you sit here and do nothing, that story becomes the truth." I looked back at the blank TV screen. My reflection stared back at me, pale, tired, angry. Something in me shifted then, not into rage, into decision, because I finally understood what Derek was counting on. Not that I'd run, that I'd be too ashamed, too hurt, too physically wrecked to fight back in a way that mattered. He thought if he looked polished enough and talked calmly enough, no one would notice what he'd done. He forgot I knew where all the paperwork lived, not physically anymore, but in my head and in other places. I handed Grace to Jada, stood up too fast, and winced. "Where you going?" she asked. "To wash my face," I said. Then I stopped in the doorway and turned back. "And tomorrow, I'm hiring a lawyer. Jada nodded once. Good. I took another step, then stopped again. There's more, I said. What do you mean? I leaned against the doorframe. When Derek started pushing me out of the business last year, I copied some records. Jada's eyebrows lifted. How many? Enough to make him nervous. Now she gave me a real smile. That's my girl. The next morning, Jada drove me to a family law office near downtown Lincoln. My attorney was a woman named Denise Shaw, late 50s, silver bob, navy suit, no nonsense. She shook my hand, looked at the twins in their carriers, then looked back at me. You left the hospital because you believed your children were at risk of being taken from you, she said. Yes. Did you intend to disappear forever? No. Good, she said, because judges understand frightened mothers. They do not love vanishing acts. I told her the whole story. She didn't interrupt much, just took notes and asked clean, sharp questions. When I finished, she leaned back and said, Your husband made a mistake. He weaponized timing. He assumed you'd be too physically vulnerable to respond effectively. That sounds like Derek. She folded her hands. Do you want a clean custody fight, or do you want the full truth examined? I hesitated because until that moment, if I'm being honest, I hadn't fully admitted what I wanted. Not money, not even revenge exactly. I wanted him to stop being the narrator. I wanted the record corrected. I want the truth on paper, I said. Denise nodded. Then you also need a forensic accountant. I let out a slow breath. I know someone. And I did. A man named Kevin Wells in Grand Island. Quiet, methodical, former IRS auditor. I'd met him years earlier during a compliance mess. Derek hated him because he noticed things, which meant I trusted him instantly. Denise gave me a long look. You came in more prepared than most. I almost said I spent 10 years married to a man who taught me to expect the worst. Instead, I just said, I learned from experience. When Jada and I got back to the house, the sky had gone flat and gray. One of those Nebraska afternoons where everything looks a little tired. Emma started crying before we'd even gotten inside. Then Grace joined in. I stood in Jada's kitchen with a diaper bag sliding off my shoulder, my incision aching, court paperwork tucked under one arm, and 2 screaming newborns in front of me. And for one ugly moment, I almost lost my nerve. I almost called Derek. Not because I wanted him back, because I was tired. That kind of tired makes bad ideas sound reasonable. Then I remembered his hand on Brianna's back, his voice saying, I only want the kids, the TV interview, the lawyer's threat. And just like that, the weakness passed. Not completely. Nothing disappears that neatly, but enough. I picked up Emma first, then Grace, and I said out loud to no one but myself and those 2 tiny girls, we are not going back. That night, after Jada went to bed, I sat at her dining room table under the yellow light fixture with Kevin Wells' number written on a receipt beside me. The twins were finally asleep in the bassinet. My body hurt. My eyes felt full of sand. But for the first time since the hospital, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing. I picked up the phone and made the call. Kevin Wells drove down from Grand Island 2 days later in a silver Ford Taurus that looked like it had never once gone over the speed limit. That was Kevin all over. He was in his early 60s, built like a fence post with thinning gray hair and the kind of face people trusted by accident. He wore a brown sport coat, sensible shoes, and carried a black accordion file that looked older than at least one of my twins. When Jada opened the door, he nodded politely, stepped inside, and said, I brought my own calculator. Jada blinked. Well, that's comforting. He gave the smallest hint of a smile. I liked him immediately. We sat at Jada's dining room table while the twins slept in the bassinet by the living room window. Every so often, one of them made a tiny snuffling noise, and I'd glance over without even thinking. Kevin noticed that, but didn't comment. He just opened the file and said, Show me what you kept. I had more than Derek would have guessed. Not everything, I'm not a magician. But over the last year, when Derek started easing me away from the company accounts and telling me Brianna was streamlining operations, I'd copied what I could. Payment summaries, tax filings, vendor spreadsheets, internal transfer records, a few emails I'd printed because something about them had made my stomach tighten at the time. Now I spread those papers across Jada's table between a sugar bowl and a jar of wooden spoons. Kevin adjusted his glasses and began sorting. He barely spoke for the first half hour, just made neat little stacks and scribbled notes in tiny block letters. Once he asked, "Did Mitchell Construction always use Prairie West Logistics?" "No," I said. "That vendor showed up about 18 months ago." He nodded once and wrote something down. Then after another few minutes, he tapped one sheet with the eraser end of his pencil. "This subcontractor ID number is incomplete." I leaned in. "What does that mean?" "It means either someone got careless or someone assumed no one would look closely." Jada set a plate of sandwiches on the table. "I'm rooting for careless and criminals," she said. Kevin looked up. "In my field, those often travel together." That got the first real laugh out of me in days. It felt strange laughing with surgical tape still pulling at my skin and fear still sitting square in my chest. But maybe that's how people survive. Not by feeling one thing at a time, but by carrying several at once and somehow continuing anyway. By late afternoon, Kevin had covered half the table with organized piles. He finally leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "Well," he said. That word landed heavily. Jada folded her arms. "That bad?" Kevin looked at me first. "Do you want the cautious version or the plain one?" "The plain one." He nodded. "Your husband has been moving company money through shell vendors, around 1.8 million over 14 months. The number made the room feel suddenly smaller. I looked down at the paperwork, then back at him. "For what?" "That," he said, "is where it gets interesting." He picked up a second stack and pointed to several line items. Luxury furniture deliveries, interior design charges, mortgage payments, utility hookups, all assigned through vendor reimbursements that had no business relation to construction. "Does this address mean anything to you?" he asked. I looked at the page. West Maple Road, Omaha. No. Then I looked again and something clicked. I'd seen that zip code on a forwarded mail slip once, months earlier, in Derek's glove compartment. Not a business address, a home. I sat back slowly. He bought her a house. Kevin didn't answer right away, which was answer enough. Jada muttered something under her breath that definitely wasn't church language. For a few seconds, I just sat there, hearing the refrigerator hum and one of the babies sigh in her sleep. A house. While I was doing fertility injections in our bathroom for 2 years, praying maybe this round would be the round that worked, Derek was buying his secretary a house. I should tell you something that isn't flattering. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I got embarrassed. Not because of him, because of me. Because there's a particular kind of humiliation that comes with finally seeing how long you've been lied to. You start replaying old conversations and realizing the truth had been sitting right there in the room with you, smiling while you poured the coffee. Kevin must have seen something on my face because his voice softened a little. "This is not on you." I looked at him. He shrugged once. Men like Derek rely on confidence, not brilliance. They count on other people doubting themselves first. That helped more than he probably knew. I stood up carefully, walked to the bassinet, and checked on the twins even though they were fine. Emma's hand had slipped out from under her blanket. I tucked it back in. When I turned around, Jada was watching me. "You okay?" "No," I said. Then I took a breath. "But I'm listening." So Kevin kept going. The shell companies were flimsy. At least two appeared to exist, mostly on paper. Prairie West Logistics had no proper operating history. Another subcontractor, Midwest Earth Solutions, shared a mailing address with a UPS store. The false invoices weren't elegant either, just frequent enough and scattered enough that a lazy reviewer might skim past them. Derek had gotten sloppy, or maybe greedy. Kevin tapped the stack again. "He's making a big move. That's usually when people get careless." "What kind of big move?" He looked over at me. "Mitchell Construction is up for the Nebraska Highway resurfacing contract, right?" I nodded. It was the one Derek had been obsessed with for months. $40 million, state-level visibility, the kind of contract that moved a local company into a different category entirely. Kevin folded his hands. If he lands it, he'll use the win to bury questions. People love success. It makes them less curious. Jada sat down again. "So what are we talking about here? Tax fraud? Embezzlement?" Kevin gave one of his careful little non-committal shrugs. "I'm talking about enough misconduct to trigger a closer look. Maybe several." I lowered myself back into my chair. The babies were still asleep. Jada's clock ticked on the wall. Outside, somebody's dog barked twice and then stopped. Normal sounds. A very abnormal conversation. My phone buzzed on the table. This time it was Denise Shaw. I answered right away. "Nia, how are the girls?" "Asleep for once." "Good. I just got off the phone with opposing counsel." I closed my eyes for a second. Let me guess. Derek is concerned. He's petitioning emergency temporary custody. A flush of heat spread through me so fast it made my ears ring. On what grounds? He's claiming you're medically fragile, emotionally compromised, and in hiding with the twins. Jada heard enough from my face alone to know it was bad. Kevin quietly started gathering one section of papers into a separate folder. "What does he want?" I asked. Denise's voice stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. "He wants the children produced before the court within 72 hours. I pressed my hand against my incision, not because it hurt more in that moment, but because I needed something solid to hold on to. "And if I do that, then he'll present himself as the stable parent with resources." I laughed once, short and humorless. Resources. That's one word for stolen money. There was a beat of silence on the line. Then Denise said, "Do you have something?" I looked at Kevin. He gave the tiniest nod. "Yes," I said. "Maybe." "Good," she said, "because if what you have is what I think it is, we stop playing defense." After I hung up, Jada said, "I hate that man so much." Kevin corrected her mildly. "You hate his timing. As a person, he may also be unpleasant." That actually made Jada laugh. I didn't. Not yet. Because Denise's words were still hanging in the air. We stop playing defense. That night, I barely slept. The twins were up every 2 hours. My stitches itched and burned. My milk came in harder, which meant engorgement, crying babies, damp nursing pads, and one point around 3 a.m, when I sat on the edge of Jada's bed in the dark and seriously considered whether I was strong enough for any of this. That's the truth. People love stories where a woman gets betrayed and instantly turns into some sharp-eyed, avenging angel in perfect lipstick. That was not me. At 3 a.m, I was in an oversized t-shirt with one breast leaking through it, trying not to wince every time I stood up, praying both babies wouldn't start screaming at once. And for one weak, ugly moment, I thought maybe Derek should just have what he wants. Not because he deserved it, because I was tired enough to picture surrender as relief. Then Grace cried. Just one sharp little cry from the bassinet by the dresser. I got up, picked her up, and held her against my shoulder. Her tiny body settled almost immediately. Warm, trusting, mine. I looked over at Emma, asleep beside her sister, and felt something in me harden again. Not into cruelty, into steadiness. Derek wanted me overwhelmed, ashamed, cornered. Fine. But tired women still know how to count. The next afternoon, Denise came to Jada's house in person. She arrived with a leather briefcase and the expression of someone who had not been impressed by a man in a suit in at least 20 years. Kevin laid out what he'd found. She listened, asked precise questions, and read the papers one by one. She never rushed, never dramatized.
I like that about her.
Finally, she set the last page down. "This is serious," she said. Jada from the kitchen doorway muttered, "That's lawyer for jackpot." Denise almost smiled. Then she turned to me. "There's a hearing next month before the Nebraska Department of Transportation Review Board. Mitchell Construction is expecting preliminary approval on the highway contract. I know they'll present financial viability, compliance, and executive reliability." Kevin added, "Which becomes more interesting if executive reliability is fictional." Denise nodded. "If we file too early, Derek's lawyers will frame this as a vindictive marital dispute. He'll bury us in motions, delay, spin, charm, all the usual tricks. I knew that pattern. Derek loved looking reasonable while setting fire to the room. "So what are you saying?" I asked. She folded her hands on top of the file. "I'm saying the best place to expose this may not be family court." Jada stepped fully into the room now. "Then where?" Denise looked at me. "At the contract hearing." The words just sat there for a second. At the hearing. Publicly. A week earlier, even hearing that idea might have made me shut down. But now I could see it. Derek up front in one of his tailored jackets talking about integrity and family values, while the board considered handing him $40 million. He'd be polished, confident, untouchable, until he wasn't. Still, my stomach turned. "If I do that," I said slowly, "and this becomes an investigation, the company could fall apart." "Yes," Denise said. "My girls could lose whatever financial future they'd have through him." She didn't argue, because that part was true. I looked over at the bassinet. Emma was awake now, blinking at the ceiling like she had questions about this whole world already. I swallowed hard. I don't want my daughters growing up with a father in prison. "No one is asking you to want that," Denise said. "I'm asking whether you want a man with hidden money, fraudulent vendors, and a fabricated public image to use a state contract to fund a custody war against you." That one hit, because suddenly the choice was clearer than it had been 5 seconds earlier. This wasn't about punishing Derek for cheating. This was about removing the machine he planned to use against me. Jada spoke quietly. "He's not going to stop on his own, Nia." I knew that. I had known it the moment he walked into that hospital room and treated my daughters like line items. Still, I had one more concern. "If I do this," I said, "I want the girls protected. No media names, no photos, no circus." Denise nodded immediately. "That can be arranged." Kevin closed his file. "Then I'll keep building the record." I sat there for a long moment. My body still hurt. My marriage was ash. My husband was trying to brand me unstable while he moved money through fake vendors. And somehow, in the middle of all that, my daughters had started making the sweetest little noises in their sleep. Life is strange that way. Heartbreak on one side of the room, hope on the other. I let out a breath. Then I said, "I'll do it." Jada straightened. Denise gave one firm nod like a deal had just been struck. Kevin simply wrote something down. I looked at the bassinet again and spoke more quietly. "I'm done running." That evening, after everyone left, I sat alone in Jada's living room with both girls asleep across my lap, one in each arm, and the lamp turned low beside me. The house was quiet, except for the old furnace kicking on now and then. I looked down at Emma's tiny mouth, Grace's curled fingers, their soft, dark hair. Then I thought about Derek, standing in front of a room full of officials, smiling that smooth smile, expecting another easy win. For the first time since the hospital, I pictured the moment his face would change, not because I wanted spectacle, because I wanted truth. And I was finally ready to bring it into the light. The hearing took place on a gray Tuesday morning at the Nebraska Department of Transportation headquarters. Just a wide concrete building east of downtown. Not fancy. Government buildings rarely are. Long hallways, fluorescent lights, a faint smell of copier toner, and old carpet. Jada drove us there in her pickup. I sat in the passenger seat with the twins' car seats behind me. Emma slept the whole drive. Grace made soft little hiccup sounds every few minutes. My stomach twisted the closer we got. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you get before stepping into very cold water. Jada noticed my hands gripping my coat. "You're shaking," she said. "I know. You can still walk away." I turned to look at her. "No," I said quietly. "I can't. Because if I did, Derek would keep telling the story his way, and eventually everyone would believe him." We parked across the street. Kevin met us on the sidewalk carrying his same accordion file. Denise arrived 5 minutes later in a dark blue coat and low heels that clicked sharply on the pavement. She looked at the babies first. "Those two are about to attend their first government meeting," she said. Jada snorted. "Welcome to Nebraska." Inside, the hearing room looked exactly how you'd imagine. A long table for the board, rows of folding chairs, a podium near the front, state flags in the corner, about 20 people scattered around, contractor staff, a few reporters who'd come mostly out of habit. Highway contracts were routine business here. Mitchell Construction was scheduled second on the agenda. We took seats near the back. The twins stayed quiet, which felt like a miracle. My incisions still ached when I shifted, but I barely noticed anymore. Adrenaline does strange things to pain. At 9 sharp, the board members filed in. 5 of them. Serious expressions, coffee cups, stacks of paperwork. The chairman cleared his throat. "Let's begin." The first contractor presented a bridge repair proposal. I heard maybe half of it. My focus kept drifting toward the door. Then it opened. Derek walked in. Gray suit, blue tie, perfect hair. Brianna followed behind him carrying a leather portfolio. They didn't see me at first. Derek shook hands with 2 board members, smiling easily, confident the way he always was before big deals. For a moment, watching him, I felt something strange. Not love, but familiarity. The memory of the man I used to believe in. Then Brianna leaned close to whisper something in his ear, and that memory vanished. They took seats near the front. The chairman shuffled papers. Next item, Mitchell Construction Highway Resurfacing Proposal, District 4. Derek stood, buttoned his jacket, walked to the podium. He looked exactly like the man who'd appeared on television the week before. Calm, responsible, concerned father, respected businessman. "I appreciate the board's time today," he began. His voice filled the room, confident, polished. He spoke about workforce reliability, cost efficiency, years of successful projects across eastern Nebraska. Then he said the line that made my stomach tighten. "At Mitchell Construction, we believe integrity is the foundation of every road we build." Jada leaned toward me and whispered, "Well, that's bold." Derek continued. He talked about job creation, community partnerships, safety, compliance. Every sentence sounded clean and respectable, exactly the story he wanted told. Then Denise touched my arm. "Now," she said quietly. My heart jumped hard in my chest. I stood. Every movement felt louder than it probably was. My coat rustled. One of the car seat handles clicked. People turned. Derek glanced over casually and froze. For a second, he didn't seem to understand what he was seeing. Me, standing in the back of the hearing room, holding Grace with Emma sleeping in the carrier beside Jada. His mouth opened slightly. "Nia." The room fell quiet. The chairman frowned. "Ma'am, do you have business with this proceeding?" Denise stepped forward beside me. "Yes," she said calmly. "We do." Derek stared like someone had just dropped a snake on the floor. "What is this?" he said sharply. I walked slowly down the aisle. Every step echoed in the silent room. Grace stirred in my arms but didn't cry. I stopped near the front table. Derek's face had gone pale under the fluorescent lights. "Nia," he said again, voice tight. "Now this isn't the place." "For a family dispute?" I asked quietly. Denise spoke before he could continue. "My client has information directly relevant to the board's evaluation of Mitchell Construction." The chairman leaned forward. "What kind of information?" Kevin stepped up beside us and placed his accordion file on the table. "Financial documentation," he said. Derek's eyes flicked to the file, then back to me. Something in his expression changed. Not anger, calculation. "Nia," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "Whatever this is, we can discuss it privately." I looked at him, really looked. This was the man who thought $3 million could make me disappear. I shook my head once. No. Kevin slid a small USB drive across the table toward the board. "This contains internal accounting records, subcontractor payment histories, and vendor documentation associated with Mitchell Construction." One of the board members picked it up. "What are you alleging exactly?" Kevin answered calmly. "Potential financial misconduct." The room that very still. Derek laughed once, but it sounded forced. "This is ridiculous," he said. "My estranged wife is upset about our divorce." Denise spoke again. "The documentation includes false vendor invoices, shell companies, and off-book transfers totaling approximately $1.8 million. Now the reporters in the back started paying attention. Pens moved. Phones came out. Derek's confidence cracked. "That's nonsense," he snapped. Kevin didn't react. One of the board members handed the USB to a staff technician. "Let's review it." The technician plugged it into a laptop connected to the projector screen. The first document appeared. Payment logs, vendor names, transfer totals. Kevin pointed. Prairie West Logistics, Midwest Earth Solutions. Neither entity maintains legitimate construction operations. Derek's jaw tightened. These are legitimate subcontractors. Kevin flipped another page. Both mailing addresses correspond to commercial mailboxes. The chairman looked at Derek. "Mr. Mitchell?" Derek shifted his stance. "I'll need to review whatever these people claim to have." Then another document appeared on the screen. An email from Brianna Parker. Subject line, vendor transfer. The room read silently as the message displayed. "Don't worry, I moved the funds through Prairie West again. Same method worked last quarter." Brianna's face went white. Derek turned toward her. "What is this?" She looked stunned. I didn't." Another email followed, this one referencing a property purchase. Mortgage payment confirmation attached. The address appeared on screen. West Maple Road. The board members exchanged glances. One of them leaned toward the microphone. Mr. Mitchell, is this property connected to your business operations? Derek's voice had lost its smooth edge. No. Kevin spoke quietly. Company funds paid the mortgage. That was when Derek exploded. This is harassment, he shouted. A bitter divorce stunt. Grace shifted in my arms. I bounced her gently without looking away from him. No, I said. My voice stayed steady. I spent 10 years keeping your books straight. Derek pointed at me. You're trying to destroy everything. I shook my head. No, I said softly. You did that when you started lying. Silence spread across the room. The chairman cleared his throat. Given the seriousness of these allegations, this board is suspending Mitchell Construction's contract consideration pending a full investigation. A reporter whispered something excitedly behind us. Derek looked around like the room had suddenly tilted. You can't do this, he said. But the decision had already been made. The chairman gathered his papers. This meeting is adjourned. Chairs scraped the floor. People stood. Phones rang. Derek turned back toward me, eyes blazing. You've ruined my company. I adjusted Grace against my shoulder. No, I said again. I just stopped protecting it. Then I turned and walked out of the room. Jada followed with Emma. Kevin closed his file. Denise gave Derek one polite nod before leaving. Outside, the cool Nebraska air felt different somehow, lighter. Jada looked at me. Well, she said, that was something. Grace yawned against my shoulder. Emma stretched in her seat. I looked down at them both, and for the first time since the hospital room, my chest felt like it could finally breathe again. The investigation started faster than I expected. Within a week of the hearing, 2 state auditors showed up at Mitchell Construction's office in Omaha. By the end of that same week, Derek's company accounts were frozen, pending review. The story made the Omaha World Herald and 2 local TV stations. Not front-page screaming headlines. Nebraska isn't a place that enjoys spectacle. But the facts were there. Questions about subcontractors, suspended contract review, financial irregularities. Derek called me 3 times that first day. I didn't answer. The 4th time, Denise called instead. He'd like to speak with you through counsel, she said. That sounds healthier for everyone, I replied. By then, the twins were almost 5 weeks old. Life had settled into a strange, quiet rhythm at Jada's house. Feedings every few hours, laundry that never seemed to end, stacks of diapers, the small, repetitive routines of caring for newborns. For a while, that rhythm felt like the only stable thing in my life. Outside Jada's kitchen window, October crept into Nebraska slowly. The leaves around Holmes Lake started turning copper and red. Mornings smelled like cold air and wet grass. Inside the house, the twins grew stronger. Emma liked to stretch her arms straight out like a tiny weightlifter. Grace had a habit of scrunching her face before every yawn. Those little things anchored me more than any legal strategy ever could. One afternoon, Jada sat across from me at the kitchen table while I bounced Grace gently on my knee. You look different, she said. How? Less like someone waiting for the sky to fall. I thought about that. Maybe because it already did. She nodded slowly. Fair point. The legal process moved in its usual slow, careful way. Derek's lawyers tried to argue that the financial records were being misinterpreted, but Kevin's documentation held up. The shell vendors were real enough on paper to fool quick audits, but under real scrutiny, they unraveled fast. Mailbox addresses, missing equipment records, payments routed through personal accounts. Derek had counted on no one ever digging deeply. That was his mistake. 2 months after the hearing, the state formally withdrew Mitchell Construction from contract eligibility pending the outcome of a broader investigation. That same week, the custody hearing took place. This time, the courtroom was much smaller than the hearing room had been. Just a judge, a clerk, Denise, Derek's attorney, and the two of us sitting across from each other. Derek looked older, not dramatically, but the polish had faded. The confidence he used to wear like armor now seemed thinner. He barely glanced at the twins in their carriers. The judge reviewed the situation carefully. Evidence of financial misconduct. Pending investigation. Public statements Derek had made about my mental stability that no longer held much weight given the surrounding facts. Finally, after nearly an hour of questions and arguments, the judge folded his hands and said, "For the time being, primary custody will remain with the mother." Just like that. Not dramatic, not triumphant, but solid. Derek closed his eyes briefly. The hearing ended a few minutes later. Outside the courthouse, he stopped me near the sidewalk. "Nia." I turned. For the first time since the hospital, we stood face to face without lawyers or reporters around. "You didn't have to do this," he said. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. I thought about that for a moment. "You're right," I said. That seemed to surprise him. "You didn't have to." "No," I said calmly. "You did." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking out toward the street. "I never thought you'd fight like that." I shifted Grace in my arms. Neither did I. For a moment, we both stood there in silence. Then he said quietly, "What happens now?" I answered honestly, "You figure out what kind of father you want to be, because despite everything, that part is still your choice." He nodded once, then he walked away. I didn't watch him go. 6 months later, my life looked very different from the one Derek had tried to negotiate in that hospital room. The twins were thriving. Emma laughed easily. Grace studied everything like she was already planning something. Jada still came over twice a week, usually bringing groceries and commentary about my cooking. "You're a good bookkeeper," she told me one night, "but we need to talk about your chili." "That's rude," I said. "It's honest," she said. Denise helped me finish the paperwork to open my own small accounting service. Nothing flashy, just helping local contractors keep their books clean and avoid the exact kind of mess Derek had created. The day I registered the business name, the clerk behind the counter asked, "Company name?" For a second, I hesitated. Then I said, "Nia Brooks Accounting." Brooks was my maiden name. It felt good saying it again, like stepping into sunlight after being inside too long. That $3 million Derek had given me sat untouched in a savings account. I didn't spend it, not because I was proud, but because someday it would belong to Emma and Grace. A reminder of where their story started and where it didn't end. Some evenings after the twins were asleep, I'd sit on the back porch of my small Lincoln townhouse and listen to the quiet. Nebraska nights have a certain calm to them. Wind through the trees, the occasional distant train. Peace, in other words. And sometimes I'd think about that hospital room. The smell of disinfectant, the envelope sliding across the tray table. Derek saying, "Take $3 million and sign it." At the time, he thought he was buying freedom. What he actually bought was the moment I finally stopped protecting his version of the truth. Life doesn't always hand you justice neatly tied with a ribbon, but every once in a while, it gives you a chance to stand up and correct the story. And if you're brave enough to take that chance, things can change in ways you never expected. Emma stirred inside through the baby monitor. Grace made a sleepy sigh. I stood up and went inside, because at the end of the day, those two little girls were the only reason any of this mattered. Now tell me, sis, if this story hit you in your spirit, would you have signed those papers or risen up like I did? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every single one. If this touched you, give it a like. Subscribe for more real stories about love, betrayal, and Black women winning. And share it with your sister who might need this reminder today. Thank you for listening to my truth. Stay strong, stay prayed up, and remember, when they try to bury you, that's when you grow into something beautiful. Until next time, this is Nia, signing off with love.